Better?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Book Witches with a B. I am Oorja, and our regular other host, Colleen, is recovering from her grand European adventure. So I thought it would be fun to bring on my mom, Manju, and my grandma, Sunita, and have them on to discuss one of my mom's favorite book series, the number one Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. Go ahead and say hi.
Hi, I'm Manju.
Hi, I'm Sunita.
And so it's going to be actually, my mom did a lot of the preparation for this book, which was a nice break for me as well. So we're just going to mostly be talking about the first book, the number one Ladies Detective Agency. But we're going to talk a little bit about like the history, a little bit about the author, and get into some fun deep dives. This is a mystery series. It is not a murder mystery, technically speaking, but it is a really fun, almost like whimsical kind of like callback to the old days of Agatha Christie, which we'll talk about because she's brought up a lot in the book. Um, so I think that first, what we're going to do is I'm going to give everyone a brief recap of the book, and then we're going to get into our regularly scheduled segments. All right, book recap. Here we go. The first novel in Alexander McCall Smith's widely acclaimed The Number One Ladies Detective Agency series tells the story of the delightfully cunning and enormously engaging Precious Ramotswe, who is drawn to her profession to help people with problems in their lives. Immediately upon setting up a shop in a small storefront in Gaborone, she is hired to track down a missing husband, uncover a con man, and follow a wayward daughter. But the case that tugs at her heart and lands her in danger is a missing 11-year-old boy who may have been snatched by witch doctors. Dun dun dun.
Yep.
All right. So that is what we're talking about today. We might have a couple of spoilers for the rest of the universe just because it's kind of hard to talk about the one without talking about others when you've read all of them. This is the only one I have read of this series, to be honest, but I'm excited to hear you talk about it. Um, so let's head to book superlatives. We have found that this actually works really well across all of the books that we've read. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think about it. So, who would you name drama queen of the book?
At this point, in having read 25 books, um, I would say drama queen is Mama Kutsi, her
Yeah.
secretary. Um, in the first book, because the characters are not so well known to us yet or, developed, but I would still say Mama Kutsi because she loves she's so proud of her 97% in the secretarial college,
Right.
and she considers herself more educated than Mara Motswe, who's only done high school,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who is her boss, but
Who's the
who is
most
Drama
the
dramatic?
most dramatic in the book.
dramatic is Bakutsi only. Yeah.
Yes.
She is because the way she behaves, she acts, she has no patience. Immediately she will talk what she thinks, whether it is good or bad, no matter. Immediately she whatever she wants to express, that's it.
She'll say it.
That,
That's
that is the I mean impatient. She
yeah.
has no patience at all. Yeah.
That's really funny because that's who I thought of as well. I thought she's
As well.
probably because everyone is kind of very even-mannered. I mean, not even-mannered. They have strong emotions, but everyone's kind of very logical in the way they react to things. But she's so like she has an emotional way of reacting to everything, I feel like.
I think so. I mean, the kind of things she comes up with. And a little tidbit about her, a little bit of a spoiler, but in the eventually in the book series, she realizes that her shoes are talking to her. She loves shoes.
Yeah.
She is crazy about shoes. And because she comes from a poor background and she could never afford shoes, when she does eventually become able to afford things, she buys a lot of shoes and they talk to her according to her.
Very expensive shoes. She wants to wear as a prestige. She wants to show herself, no?
Yeah.
Her personality maybe a little bit depends on how she walks with those
On
shoes
the
in.
shoes. That's so funny.
Hmm, hmm.
That's so funny. And then what do you think the craziest thing to happen was? Now, just for a little context with our audience, this book, there's a couple of cases that are solved. There's a few mysteries that are solved along with like the big one. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of kind of crazy things that happen. So what do you think the craziest thing was?
So I really the main case about that missing boy and the way you know, the not so good cultural aspect of the witch doctors and how Mara Motswe goes about solving that case
Mm-hmm.
of that little boy being, I mean, other people have tried to solve the case. The police investigation has happened, it's been in the newspapers, and she basically decides not to take the case until it becomes like she's like, no, I have to do something.
Yeah,
It's heartrending to her that this is
that's right.
happening in
Yeah.
their society. And this is one of the endearing qualities of Mara Motsu, I
And
think.
she might feel guilty if she doesn't solve the problem of that case.
Yeah.
She will feel guilty all the time. So she thinks my duty, I have to solve this and help the people
Yeah.
Yeah.
and find out the cause.
So I think that was that thing about the whole witch doctor and the Mootie, bag of Mootie and finger bone found was really crazy.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah.
that was crazy. I was gonna say, just like her first case with the missing husband, she just like shoots a crocodile and slices it open and is like, is this your husband's watch? And the wife is like, oh yeah, like no reaction. That was
Yeah.
really crazy for me.
So did you think of any other thing that was more crazy, or what did you think was the craziest thing in the book?
This thing that which I never read in so many books that I read, I never knew that she is good shooter. And
Yeah,
her father taught her shooting. And once only, it was very difficult case. She went, I mean, she killed with her the alligator in the river. I
yeah,
mean, she was also scared a bit, but she thought, no, I have to anyway solve the problem. That is my duty. I am for that.
yeah,
So,
for me
I
too.
mean, lot of courage, at night time in
I
the
know.
dark to go and shoot and in first attempt,
And she
somehow, I
gets
mean,
it.
that is the character after
Yeah,
all.
I mean
But
the cunning, the intelligence to think like she goes and she does her investigation and she's like, it was probably an alligator. Like the fact that she knew what she was looking for was really incredible, I thought.
yeah.
Yeah,
She
that's
finds
true.
for her, no, recognize that her husband is dead.
Hmm.
That's it.
Okay. So, thank you for sharing your superlatives. That was really fun. Um, since Colleen isn't with us here today, I thought it would be fun to do Manju's Corner. My
Oh.
mom is going to talk a little bit about, well, it's her corner, so she's going to talk about whatever she wants to. Welcome to Manju's Corner. Woo woo.
All
All right,
right.
floor is yours.
Well, I thought I found a really good quote in the New York Times about these books, the series of books, and it kind of really expresses a little bit about what I think about this series of books and the author, Alexander McCall Smith. So I'm just going to read that real quick. It's a very short quote.
Sure.
McCall Smith's generous writing and dry humor, his gentleness and humanity, and his ability to evoke a place and a set of characters without caricature and or condescension have endeared his books to readers. And I do feel like, you know, he has this sense of humor. He has well, to go into his history a little bit as to why he might have written about, you know, mysteries. He Let's go to the beginning. He was born in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, and he grew up in Zimbabwe partly, and then he is a law professor. So he taught in the University of Botswana for many years. He taught law. So and now he is in Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh, which you've been to, but. So anyway, so he, I guess, in my the way after reading these series of books, he through his connection with Botswana and Zimbabwe, he learned a lot about that culture, and so he set these the knowledge that he has as a law professor and having probably come across a lot of cases, I think he set them kind of in that context of Botswana, which I thought was really nice. One of the ways that I've heard his books being described, as opposed to, you know, most of the like mysteries, they have death, murder, and his don't necessarily have that, you know, and it's called the cozy mystery genre. I thought that was a pretty appropriate way of kind of describing his books, because it does have excitement, it does have, you know, bravery, it has, you know, all the things that a mystery novel might have, but there's no gore. You know, so it's kind of cozy. So that's one of the things about his books. Maybe in the deep dive, we could go more about into the kind of protagonist, like the kind of protagonist he chooses, Mara Motsui, because most mystery novels might have, you know, a young, kind of sexy, kind of detective kind of personality, and his is completely different. And then the other thing we might go into in deep dive also is that people have criticized that a white man is writing about a white Scottish man is writing about a black, you know, writing in the voice of a black woman in Africa. But many things I have to say about that, but we can discuss that in deep dive. I just wanted to also do a little tiny history of Botswana, just to know that it achieved its independence from Britain in 1966.
Quite late.
Yeah, quite late.
Okay.
Yeah. And one of the people she mentions a lot and is very proud of, Mara Motsui and Mama Kusi, they're all proud of their first president, and his name is Seretse Khama, and he was the first president. And I read that he really brought Botswana to become more modern and put in a lot of good socioeconomic, you know, developments and stuff like that. So she speaks very highly of him and has his picture in her house, which a lot of Botswana people have. And then if it's singular, there a person from Botswana is called a Motswana. And then it's plural, it's called Batswana, and it's because Tswana is one of the major tribes.
Oh,
of
interesting.
Botswana. Yeah, so
Okay.
there are a few other tribes, but one of the most major tribes are the
Swala.
Tswana tribe that happens to live in Botswana, and that's why it's called Botswana. And then their language is called Setswana.
Hmm.
It's
So
one.
yeah,
That's
and so
so
they were
interesting.
yeah. So I thought all these are the interesting things for this book. He's written a lot of other mystery books as well, but this has been my favorite.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that puts the stories into a lot of nice context too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because thinking, we'll talk about it more in the deep dive, but I think cozy mystery is like such a good description of this genre because it is cozy. It's like it's mystery, it's exciting, you want to know what's going to happen, but like nothing truly horrible happens. I mean, the guy is eaten by an alligator, but his wife's not super upset about it. So
Right.
nothing, nothing like really truly horrible happens. And it's one of those like there's always a way, she'll always find a way to make it right, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, I never knew, I don't think I even thought about, which that's bad on me. I never thought about like the formation of the country and the people who live there. It's very interesting that that's the context of like the name of the people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And people are always interested in mystery because something is going to happen. No, what is tomorrow? After that, what is happening? What is happening? Curious to know. And so they are fond of mystery books more, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
That could be the reason, no? The curiosity.
Yeah. Oh, I love a mystery. We can talk about this in the deep dive. Let's go. Let's put a pin in this.
Yes.
Is there anything else you wanted to add
Uh,
for your corner?
I think because we are going to discuss the deep dive, there's a few issues that we can, kind of discuss in that
Mm-hmm.
about,
Or different stories from different.
yeah, from the books. But yeah, I think that's, you know, pretty much what I wanted to say. I think it gives a good background for all our other discussions. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for providing that information. I was very curious about Alexander McCall Smith, because he's a white man teaching in Edinburgh law, and I was like, how did he come up with the idea to write about Maramo's Way in Botswana solving mysteries? So that's really good context. Um,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's move on to the deep dive then. Deep dive discussion. So I am my mother's daughter. My mother prepared a very lengthy document, which if you've seen me, I do the same thing to Colleen and our special guests. Very lengthy document of things that we want to discuss.
Hmm.
Um, but we're also, there's just so much to talk about in this book. So if we go a little bit off on a tangent here or there, don't worry about it. We'll bring it back around.
Okay.
All right. So let's start at the top then. Let's actually no, I changed my mind. Let's talk about what Aji was saying with why people are interested in mystery books. And I
Hmm.
think that maybe you wanted to bring in the whole generational appeal of the books for this as
Hmm.
well. So,
Hmm.
um we have three generations on this podcast here today, me, my mom, and my grandma. And one thing that I think ties us all together really, really nicely is we love to read. Reading is probably our favorite activity.
Yes.
I grew up with a love of reading because of my mom and because of my grandma, who I call Edgy. That's our word for grandma. That's our word for mother's mom specifically.
Yes.
in Marathi. Um, and I grew up with Aji making up stories and telling us stories before bedtime and reading us. The Aji would fall asleep in the middle of reading, and we'd be like, Aji, wake up, you have to finish the story. Um,
Oh,
so,
funny.
I think that might be the beginning of where I enjoyed mysteries because sometimes Aji would fall asleep in the middle of a story and I wouldn't know what was going to happen and I needed to know. So, um, so
Uh,
mysteries are one of my favorite genres, and it's because of the amount of thinking that you have to do, and it's in a really fun way. And so the whole investigation thing, you're like looking at clues, you're building up cases in your head while you're reading for why this person is the one or what's happened or whatever it is. And this this particular book in general, the appeal of this is that it's very like there's something so comforting about it because people, and that's I think what I like about mysteries in general is the people who are setting out to solve the mysteries are good people who have to solve the mystery either for themselves or their family in some cases or for the people that they're helping to solve the mysteries. um, and I think that that quest for the truth is something that I find really appealing.
Mm,
What about
yeah.
you guys?
Well, I think for me, I have read like Agatha Christie and Alfred Hitchcock and,
mm,
uh, the what was that? Nancy Drew mysteries when I was
Yeah.
really young,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them were women. So I did not question the fact that Mara Mosme is a woman, but apparently she was questioned that
mhm.
in Botswana that. But the book is also written in 1998. I forgot to mention that fact.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was written in 1998, which wasn't that too far away from when they got independence.
Yeah,
And
66.
also now it's 2025 and we have 26 books. So almost every year he's written a book.
Mm.
Yeah.
But I think to me, I do like this genre as well. But I like the cozy genre better than like something really gory or really. And as I've grown older, I am more for these kind of books because I think it in these books it just really brings out the goodness of people,
Mm-hmm.
rather than being like uh, people putting people into a box. Like if they're like this, then they're like this.
Yeah.
Like they're bad, then they're bad. Whereas in this, I think people's characters are very much explored and they can be good and bad at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why, I particularly like this book and I like mysteries because, they're fun. The same thing. You have to kind of try to figure out clues and, be very observant and curious. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why I like mysteries as well. And you were saying you like mysteries as
Yeah,
well?
like
Yeah.
Agatha Christie's few. There was one series, I don't remember,
Hmm.
and it was going on for many years or maybe, and I watched some of them. I don't remember actually the story as such,
Hmm.
but mysteries, they are always, I mean, popular among everybody, even children, no?
Yeah.
But I was going to say, Urja, when you were little, you used to love those books where you had to find the clues and reach the treasure and stuff like that. Remember you
Yeah.
used those kind of books?
Yeah. Do you remember I started my own super spy agency? Oh
I do
man.
remember that.
Spy school. I would teach
Yeah,
people how to spy on people and discover clues and solve things.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I,
silly.
I
So I think it's a good, I think because we've been talking about mysteries that we like and all of that stuff. Um, I too, yeah, I mean, Nancy Drew is one of my favorite. I like Agatha Christie books. I love Miss Marple.
Mm-hmm.
This one, Mara Motsue. I love women detectives a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you had wanted to kind of compare Mara Motsue with some of the other women detectives that exist, famous women detective characters that exist out there.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you were thinking first?
Well, the thing is, there was the that series called Murder She Wrote,
Mhm.
About
and
Agatha Christie's.
no, Murder She Wrote was well, it was a series in which Angela Lansbury,
Angela Lansbury.
Lansbury or Lansbury used to
Lansbury.
Lansbury,
Lansbury.
yeah, she used to act.
Hmm.
And again, those were she did like wherever she went, she noticed something. Her attention was taken by something, or she became curious by something, and she um so went about solving those mysteries. But she was a young, you know, good looking kind of woman. And I think Miss Marple is the same kind of thing where they're all, younger
No,
women.
so Miss Marple
Miss Marple was an older
was an
woman.
old woman,
Yes.
and
And
that's
that
why
was,
she got around and she got away with snooping and sleuthing because like they were like, oh, this crazy old woman, and she like,
yes. And Agatha Christie got a little, I remember now, she got a little upset that, I want this. Women are smart no matter what age they
Yeah.
are. And so
Mhm.
she purposely made her protagonist an older woman. I
Mhm.
think she was widowed, and she,
Yeah,
went about doing this.
solving mysteries.
Yes. Now, Mara Motswe, I don't know if Alexander McCall Smith had any kind of purpose in the kind of protagonist he has come up with, but she is always described as traditionally built.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I
Traditionally.
love that because I think, it's a very sweet and positive way
Word.
of
Yeah.
describing,
Yeah.
because we
Otherwise,
have this
act.
whole, yeah, the
Nobody likes.
the the world has this whole idea of, what is the right way to be, or what is, the best way to be, or
Hmm.
whatever. And she's not that, well, she is 34 when
Mhm.
she starts
Yeah.
Yeah.
her
Which,
business.
in I think in those days, in that cultural context as well, is, I mean, that's like older, you know?
Yes, yes,
I
it is.
shudder to say that because I'm only 2 years away from that age, but that's
As I was gonna say,
considered
today's
older, I think.
today's context, 34 is very young, but in
Yeah.
those days, 34,
Mm.
you were married, had a few kids, and
Mm.
so on. So, yeah, but she is traditionally built, and sometimes, she faces people saying,
Yeah.
looking at her and
Mhm.
thinking,
Calling her
oh,
like a fat woman. Yeah. I mean,
yes,
they literally say that even in the first book, it's said
yes,
to her. Yeah.
yes, yes. And she says, she keeps her chin high and says, well,
Yeah.
I'm traditionally built,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
I just love that. So I think that, um, there is a lot of scope for, and this book is so popular,
Hmm.
loved. So I think
Mm.
there's a lot of scope for protagonists to not have to be young and sexy or beautiful or well dressed,
Or
or,
skinny.
from a city or anything,
Mhm.
you know. And then
Yeah.
if you also look at Mama Kutsi's character, she's
I
complete,
mean,
like
the
she's not
village.
even educated.
Mm.
She is described as not that beautiful,
Hmm.
Still, with the
and yet,
glasses, her
yes, and big,
personality.
huge
Really.
glasses and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
she is shown to be eventually loved by everybody and
Hmm.
as respected as Mara Motsume for her skills.
Yeah, I think that I think what you're hitting on is probably something that we've been talking a lot about lately, actually
Mm,
in our regular season that we're doing right now, Blood Over Brighthaven, where it's like um, it's this issue of feminism and what does feminism mean to people. And
mm,
I think it's like we've like narrowed it down. Basically, when we speak about feminism, it's literally just a woman's right to choose. It's a
right.
woman's right to make her own choices about her own self.
Yeah.
And but I think if you look at it in like a broader context of how society views women, society views women who deviate from that skinny, young, good looking
Hmm.
person to like
Hmm.
those people aren't as useful to society or don't hold as much value in
Yeah.
society. And
Yeah.
this book, Mara Motswe, is absolutely flies in the face of that. She's
Yeah.
extremely intelligent. She is a
Mm,
beautiful, warm, wonderful woman.
mm,
You know, Mrs. Marple, she is very intelligent. You can't get anything past her. And I mean, that also brings in a little bit of like the ageism of society, you know, where like people think that older people are no longer useful. Also, very incorrect.
yeah.
and
Totally.
um and I think that that's like probably one of the major reasons why a lot of girls and women gravitate towards these female detective stories is because it's like you see that people who are not just that tiny little, you
Hmm.
know, acceptable part of
Yeah.
society, those people are still extremely useful and valuable and have rich, wonderful lives, are intelligent, help people, all of this stuff. I think that that's like probably I think that Alexander McCall Smith did a really good job with including, I mean, he's a man and he wrote this amazing woman detective. I think he did a really good job with that. And
I,
you can tell that he doesn't believe that Mara Motsue would be invaluable because she deviates from the norm. You can tell that he probably thinks that she might even be a little bit more valuable because she has an incredibly cunning mind and she has the need to do right, and those things are very valuable in society. So,
yes, I think he believes she's very valuable. You're right about ageism. I think, there's
yeah.
a lot about that this series doesn't really address that much, but they do address men and women. I don't know if you want to talk about that,
Yeah, we
but
can.
it's quite hilarious sometimes because I mean, Alexander McCall Smith is so observant. Sometimes I wonder, like, he must have had very strong women in his life, were very good,
Yeah,
strong.
yeah, yeah.
He must have had very good relationships with women in his life
Yeah.
because he is so,
They
he's,
raised in the country where when ladies were available, no, for housekeeping, cleaning,
Yeah.
cooking, taking care of babies or like that. So must be surrounded by more
Yeah.
native ladies. Could be
For
possible.
sure. Yeah, and that's the thing. So like for those viewers who don't know that much about kind of specifically like Asian countries and then based upon this probably also African countries
African
is
country.
when you live there it's really 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 easy to get very cheap household
Hmm.
help. And
Yeah.
so a lot of wealthier people, when they move there, they'll have like a couple of ladies to do the cleaning, they'll have a couple of ladies to watch the children, they'll have like nursemaids for babies. Like all of this stuff is extremely very common and prevalent even still. And so back then it was also, you know, so I think that that's what Edgy is bringing up that Alexander McCall Smith was born in Africa,
Yeah. In
in
Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe, and so he probably, considering who he is and like where he is now, his family probably hired
Hmm.
some, women from Zimbabwe to come and like take care of him and all of this stuff. So he probably had at least some deep-seated love and respect for the culture, for the strong women who he was surrounded by.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually, one of the things that Ma Ramotswe narrates in one of the books. I'm not sure if it is in one of the earlier books, but I'm not sure if it's in the first one or maybe the second one. She says that in general in Africa and in Botswana for sure, it is something like the culture believes that if you have, right, and we can say money in this, if
Mm-hmm.
you have money, then you don't just keep it, you share it around. So
Yeah.
she says one of the ways that we do it is, hiring people to do different jobs so that they can earn a living,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, and then, so it's nothing, nobody's beneath anybody else, but it is a way of making sure other people have a way of making a living and
Mm-hmm.
respectably making a way of living and have a good life. So
Yep.
that kind of, I think, society,
Social awareness.
yes,
Social
yes,
awareness.
I think that is a very important part of that, of her culture. And I think to myself, yes, that is so true. You know,
Yeah.
if you have, then you
You
should try
should
to see that
share.
people also
Yeah. You should
share.
bring the people around you up with you instead of holding on to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So,
she doesn't charges also more.
yeah,
She doesn't charge more unnecessary.
Yeah.
yeah,
Of course, for earning because she has to
Well, she
pay
has to.
I could see
Mm-hmm.
that much she must earn, but still she always has soft corner. So not just okay, charge me. I mean, I want this much. No, nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, take lightly, let him calm down and think about it.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you. I want to know what you guys thought of Mr. JLB Maticone, who is so
let's
Mr.
get
J. Huh?
What? What?
Mr. JLB Maticone is he owns an auction
Uh-huh.
and he's a
Mhm.
dear friend of Ma Ramotswe. And her name, oh, also, like, maybe we should just say this real quick. So, in Botswana, apparently, given the context of this book, Ma is like a sign of respect for a woman, and Ra, which is like RRA, I think,
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
sign of respect for men. So her name is Precious Ramotswe. Ma Ramotswe is like Miss Ramotswe, basically.
yeah.
But yeah, so Mr. JLB Maticone is one of her good friends. He helps her out in some of her cases, and
Mhm.
he's like pretty much in love with her from the beginning.
Yes.
And I love his character, but I want to know what you guys think before I start talking about him.
Okay. So her question is, what do you think about Mr. JLB Matacone's character? What do you think about him?
Character-wise, he is very soft-spoken. I mean, never fires his assistant even if they are making mistakes. They don't work hard. Or just that Charlie, who is like, I mean, guy who is more interested in ladies and all. Huh? He doesn't like that, but he wants them to learn and be good mechanic after all.
Mm-hmm.
Huh? So he is very kind-hearted. He's good that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he is very kind-hearted, good,
Mm-hmm.
and respect the people.
Yeah.
And he respects even Ma Ramotswe also. I mean, he knows that she is more intelligent, natural. But he is one of the best mechanic in the town.
Hmm.
So I mean, and what else to say? I think
Well,
that is
I agree with Aji. He seems to be, they both seem to be on the same page in terms of patriotism,
Mm-hmm.
the pride in their country and all that. But I think as a man, he is very respectful whether a person is a woman or a man.
Hmm.
He does not take, it does not
Hmm.
matter to him. And he is also, um, he's a very humble person.
Humble.
Mhm.
Yeah. It is.
But because of all this, he's a little bit of a bumbling, you know,
Yeah.
kind of person when it comes to matters, more serious matters or more emotional
Hmm.
matters. Like he knows he's in love with Mara Motsue from the beginning, but he doesn't really understand,
Yeah.
what it's all about. And the way I think he adds a little bit of the comical parts of
Yeah.
the book because um, and Alexander McCall Smith's portrayal of men,
Hmm.
is kind of also really good. So
It is.
yeah, so I think
And
his character is a little bit like that. He's kind of secondary to Mara Motsume, and he
yeah, yeah,
loves it
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. He's
Yeah.
happy to be
Yeah.
that.
And he
Yes.
is the one first when she wants to start this agency and office, he gives her typewriter.
Yes.
Yeah.
He gives her a typewriter because his office was in front and
Hmm.
she was, but they had good relation, chatting,
Yeah.
but they never thought of marrying. I don't know in the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing that I love about him, I think, the most is that he, there's like never any sort of question
Hmm.
of, it's like for him, he's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna start a detective agency. Great. Here's what you need. You can
Hmm.
come to me for advice. Like, there's never any sort of, you can't do this. You know,
True.
he never
Yeah.
tells her she can't do what she wants to do. At least in the
Mm.
first book, he doesn't. And
Yeah.
I think it's so sweet the way that he is like wholeheartedly supports her without expecting anything in return. Um, which although like, and then he asks her to marry him and she's like no, and then
Yeah.
he asks her to marry him again and she's like of
Yeah.
course.
Yes.
Um,
That's so cute.
yeah, it's very cute. I think that like adding that kind of, it's a cozy kind of love as well for our cozy mystery
Yes.
genre. You
True.
know, like there's no, she had a passionate, horrible relationship with a man and went through abuse and trauma and all of that stuff. And so she's not looking for that anymore. She's looking for like simple, supportive love, and he is that person. I think
Yeah,
it's so cute.
it is. And the only thing that frustrates him about her is that she
Well,
insists on driving that
van.
little white
Yeah, van.
van, even though it's about to
Yeah,
break down.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
This book, but let's talk
Oh,
about this little white van. So
yeah.
she drives this little white van everywhere, and it's
Hmm.
it's described as like not the best car. And
Yeah.
she takes this van all the way out to that to the witch doctor's place to rescue
Yeah.
the boy, and she's like, and we're gonna take it all the way back, and she was like, oh, my car's really broken now, I'm gonna have to get a new one.
Yeah.
So the car becomes a character, I guess. It's like a,
Yes. Yes. The little white van, just like the shoes, the little white van is like you'll see in the rest of the books,
mhm,
it becomes a character exactly.
that's
And
so
she
cute.
just doesn't want to let it go.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very cute. Yeah.
So actually, because there's so much to talk about, which in this book, which is doesn't have to do with the personal lives of the characters. There's just so much in this book.
Hmm.
I think it's important to touch upon the fact that Ma Ramotswe had, I mean, she married a man. He was very abusive. This was when she was young.
Hmm.
She had a baby, but the baby died. And then
Yes.
she just was like, done. Like, I am not even gonna think about it anymore. I like the way that he gives he gives the proper amount of gravity towards that situation because it is a part of who she is, and it does she becomes who she is because of all the stuff that has happened in her life, but I like the way that it doesn't hold any power over her either.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's really important. I think that's really important because like you can see it, she doesn't like hospitals, her heart warms with children, there's something there, but like it's not like she's this tragic heroine at all.
Right.
She's just a lady detective doing what she wants to do, and it's like very it's a I just really appreciate the way that he wrote about that and like has it contribute to her character, but not in like a she never plays the victim, and she doesn't feel she's not a victim.
Yeah, that's so true. And she comes out of it in the best way possible. And it's always there, kind of guiding her and making sure that she does not do those kind of foolish things again, you
Yeah.
know? But then, other than that, there's nothing else influencing her in that way.
Yeah. So I appreciate it that a lot.
I do have one thing I think that's important to point out
Yes.
in terms of this genre and this book, and that is the way that the cases end. You know, like most murder or mystery cases, you know, they're handed over to the police and they're handed over to the law,
Mm-hmm.
you know, courts or whatever. But in these, and they're not very big crimes or
Yeah.
anything like that, you know,
Yeah.
she generally um, comes to an understanding with whoever has committed the mistake or the crime and never reports them to the police or anything. She
No,
just
no.
kind of brings it to their attention, and it's like they learn a life lesson.
Yeah.
And so one of the cases in this is very interesting. The very first case where a man pretends to be this lady's father and just comes and lives there. And
Mm-hmm.
that's again part of Botswana culture where somebody could actually do that. You know,
Yeah.
like we would never have something like that happen now. But he says he's her long lost father and just starts living there. And she starts thinking, getting a little bit suspicious about this. So she goes, that's her case. Like, is this man my father or not? And the way she solves that mystery is she goes as a nurse and says, your daughter is in the hospital and she needs blood.
Yeah.
Great idea, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
It does what it is intended to do. The man gets scared and comes out with, okay, I'm not her father. And then she tells him, well, you know what? You need to get out of here, catch the first bus out of Gaborone, and goodbye.
There
So
are
she,
big farms of pineapple. No, not pineapple. Kalinga means what?
watermelon?
Watermelons and all. Why don't you go and work there and earn something instead of living like this
Yeah.
Yeah.
and spoiling her life? Why?
Yeah. Yeah. So the way she ends a lot of the cases is not solving, not by punishing or handing them over to somebody else or the law, but in her own way. And I think that is, you know, something that one could never think of doing anymore. But I think if you wanted a more forgiving and more supportive society
Mm-hmm.
for crimes that aren't all that bad, it may be a good way to, you know, end.
Yeah, that's a good
What
point.
to say about that?
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. I don't think I had actually thought of that while I was reading it, but I do I like the way that she has this like moral high ground,
Yes.
sort of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that that might be one of the reasons that it's such a comforting story also is because you have people learning lessons along the way, and it's
Mhm.
not I mean, yeah, like as far as she is concerned, she's like, well, why ruin this person's life when I've already solved I've already solved, I've already
Yeah.
dealt with the issue that I was hired to solve. So then why
Mhm.
like go further and spoil this other person's life, especially if what they're doing isn't like the worst thing in the world. The twins who are pretending to be one doctor might
Yes.
maybe should have reported them to the police. That's a little
One. Yeah.
maybe that
Yeah.
one. And then
Yeah.
like the witch doctor, maybe she should have reported them to the police as well.
Yeah.
But in that moment, she was way more concerned with getting the child safely home. So
Out of
like,
there. Yeah.
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 But I do think I think that that adds a little bit to like the comical, whimsical aspect of it.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
little bit.
Totally. Totally. And then the other thing about Miss Bra Matakoni is that he helps her. You know,
Yeah.
that is very, very nice of him
It's
and very cute
cute.
in their
Yeah.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
it is very cute.
Yeah.
Um,
Wonder whether I
yeah.
have anything else.
I have a question for you for the larger context of the books. So you have
Mhm.
all of these detective stories like Mrs. Marple or Poirot or Sherlock Holmes, and you
Yeah.
have um every once in a while you'll have like a arch nemesis.
Mhm.
And like so Moriarty and Sherlock, that's obviously much more prevalent, but you'll have like something dug out of the past of Poirot coming back to haunt him. Is there anything like that? Like does Ramotwe have like an arch nemesis or like a multiple book villain?
So there's nothing related to Mara Motswe herself,
Mm-hmm.
except that she was married to that, musician. And the other small thing is that her father did leave the mines job because
Yes.
he saw a murder happening.
Yes.
And so, but it's not in the 26 books that I've read, that's never referred to. But there is a villain sort in the books. And should I tell you her name?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So her name is Violet Saposo. And she's the arch nemesis of Mama Kutsi. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and their history is very funny, and she pops up many times in not in every book, but in different books
Mm-hmm.
where
And
she gets
she,
involved, with all the wrong things,
no,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have something to say about Violet Sapoto?
no, Violet, my God, she was so selfish, and she didn't earn, I mean, grade wise in the school, she
Uh-huh.
wasn't well at all. Just maybe 50% of marks she must have gained in the exam.
Yeah. She always pops up as, there's some kind of mystery. Somebody comes to her as a client,
Yeah.
and then sometimes they find out that Violet Sapoto is involved,
Yeah.
and then Mama Kutsi has this whole thing of how she
Okay.
was in the secretarial college compared to
Mm.
how Mama Kutsi was and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So yeah, it's a very interesting thing, to kind of yeah, that was a good point. That's
That's
an
so
in the
cool.
first book. I don't think she appears,
Yeah,
but
no,
she
she
Yeah,
does.
doesn't.
later
Yeah,
on.
she appears in
Mm.
all the other,
Mm.
not all, some of the other books. Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I don't know if there's anything else that I had like that I had really set aside that I wanted to talk about. So, is there anything like just random thoughts that you've thought about that you want to talk about?
Well, I would the author because and she's 34
Mm-hmm.
when in 1998 when the first book comes out, and now it's 2025, so almost 26 years.
Yeah.
So 44, 54, 64, like she's in her 60s, but in she would be. But
Mm-hmm.
as the books have progressed, although the
She's not
characters'
that old.
lives have progressed, there's not a sense that she has grown older.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
it
the
doesn't.
stories have kind of stayed in a much shorter time period
Mhm.
than the actual time period that has passed. So it
Actual
would be
period.
interesting to ask Alexander McCall Smith, like,
Right.
what is are his thoughts
Yeah.
on, you know, I mean, they get married, and then Mama Kuti has a child, and some
Yeah.
few things
But
happen that kind of move
no,
forward.
but that
But
long span
yeah,
of
26 is a
years,
long
very
number of
long,
years,
huh?
and he's pretty much written a book every year almost.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
must have.
so I don't
But
know.
still, I mean, life and everything has changed. No, world has changed.
Hmm.
And sometimes she worries, Mama Ramotre worries about the new generation.
Mhm.
Yes.
I mean, she thinks they are just their life, just enjoy, dance, drink, and just enjoyment in the life. But they may not be able to face the actual life when they start,
Mhm.
or the face the difficulties. Suddenly, they anytime they come, and
Yeah.
then on the spot, it is not easy to think and how to face or tackle the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's what she
So
beats worry about.
Mhm.
she is, let's say, your generation, but like 10 years younger than you, mommy.
Probably. Yeah.
And so
So,
she's worried about my generation not being able to face real life.
Kind of.
That's
Yeah.
so funny. That's so funny because it's so true. That is what people say about I'm a millennial. Um,
Yeah.
before Gen Z and Gen Alpha came to mess everything up even further. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. People were very concerned about millennials being able to face the reality of life as well. I think that's
Yeah.
so
but,
funny. It's so
but
accurate.
Yeah.
one thing I never worry about my grandchildren. Do you know the way they are brought up from the childhood? Huh?
Thanks.
Hmm.
I love it when I get complimented. Bringing it back to the point of like 26 years have passed in our lives, but in the books themselves, not that many. I find it interesting that he chose to progress their lives. So they get married and they have children, right? But he
Yeah.
hasn't chosen to progress the lives at the same rate that reality is moving. I think that's
Yeah.
interesting because like you do get a lot of, again, with like the famous
Hmm.
detectives and stuff, you don't really get a sense of them growing usually.
Yeah.
They just stay the same. Like Nancy Drew's been the same age for 50 years, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like they never grow older. They're always just like they're just
Hmm.
stuck at that age. Maybe the world is different. So Nancy Drew's been the same age for 50 years, but the context of the she's that age in where the world is right now. So
Right.
I find it interesting that he has chosen to do neither of those things and just
Right. I
kind
know.
of
Yeah. Yeah. So it would be very interesting to see where does this go, you
yeah.
know?
Mhm.
And I have to say, like, you would think by, having written so much and so many stories and all that, but each book has it's very interesting. I mean, it is useful to read the book in sequence because the characters develop
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
in each book, like a lot. He really develops all the characters,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also separate stories.
Yeah,
So if
you're
you
right.
didn't know too much about, the previous character, the previous books, it wouldn't matter too much.
Yeah. No,
But
and I think that I think that's why detective books are written that way, so that you can
yeah,
pick up any
yeah,
book out of
yeah,
context and
yeah.
whatever. But yeah, I I like I think I like the idea of it being a beginning point and going from there.
Hmm.
I think that
Hmm.
adds to the cozy aspect of the
Yeah,
genre as well. Everything
that's
about it is cozy.
that is so true.
You
That is
think
so true.
life is moving too fast? Well, Mara Modzwe has been married for 15 years, but she's still this age, so don't worry.
Yeah.
Her life's not moving that fast.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I did want to mention a little bit about because this was a very recent article where I read it was by it's a darlingaxe.com, and it was in April 23rd, 25, where I read about how some people are saying, a white man, he's appropriating
Mhm.
the culture and all that. And I I I feel like yes, those
Mhm.
kind of things are happening, but he is nothing is shown in a negative manner.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? It's mostly positive things about Africa and the culture.
Yeah.
And it's also, he has a deep understanding and a deep respect for the culture, is what I get from
Yeah.
reading the series. And so, it really doesn't bother me. I mean, I would like to hear from maybe people from Botswana and what they think about it, but
Yeah.
to me, it doesn't. I think he's educating people on a lot of different things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then someone also in one thing he was saying, oh, he follows like the Christian story, like the Bible and all that. And I, not a Christian or brought up a Christian or anything, but I do know some of the Bible, I do know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Uh, Not too much, I have to
No,
say, but it did not, like C.S. Lewis, if you read his, it's a
Yeah.
little more obvious.
Right. Yes.
Whereas in these books, it's not really, I mean, you could equate it to those stories, but I don't know how much, except for the whole moral
Yeah,
round
the
thing.
moral aspect of it, I think that's a good point. I have a couple of thoughts on this. So,
Yeah,
a white man from Europe, I
yeah.
believe he's Scottish, maybe.
He is
With
Scottish.
McCall Smith, yeah. So, writing about a female detective from Botswana. If you just look at it like that, I can see why people would be concerned and have an issue with that.
Yeah.
Um, he's no Rudyard Kipling. I'll say
Right.
that, right?
Yeah,
Rudyard
yeah,
Kipling wrote about India in like the most heinous,
yeah,
prejudiced, disgusting way possible. And
absolutely.
like he like it's horrendous. I haven't actually read a full book because I read an excerpt for one of my literature classes because we were studying that, and I was like, I can't do this. This is awful. It's so
Yeah,
bad. And Alexander McCall Smith is not doing that.
yeah,
You can I think that he one of the points that Edgy was making is that he's a great observer of people. He is a professor of law, so I think that that ties into it a little bit. You have to
yeah.
like read people, but
Hmm.
he is writing about Botswana and the people of Botswana and the surrounding countries as well with such like a love and respect that maybe I mean and maybe it is, like he is technically an outsider looking in on this culture, but he was raised in that culture from a young age before going back to Scotland. And I think that it doesn't Colleen would be able to talk about this a little bit better. It doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily give him the right to do it,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I also think that he I also don't think that he shouldn't write about it, if that makes
Right.
sense. You know,
I, yeah.
like, for example, I am not Scottish. I'm
Hmm.
very Indian and very American, and yet I want to write a book that's set in Scotland. The
Hmm.
argument there would be that I never colonialized
Yeah.
Scotland, or my
Yeah.
people never
Hmm.
did anything like that towards them, which the British Empire did do that to a lot, basically everywhere. So, like, from that point of view, it's like that that's the context where there's like some concern and some issues and stuff with it. But I don't think personally, I don't feel that he's doing it from a place of superiority or anything like that. I think he loved where he grew up and he loved the people. And then he
Mm,
taught at the University of Botswana, and I'm sure he loved his time there so much that he wanted, I think for him, I think it's obvious for him, he wanted to take his love of this place and bring it to the world,
I think
which is
so.
like a, at its base, is very different from the way other people have written about other cultures.
Yeah,
So,
I agree. Totally. I totally agree with that. So,
yeah.
oh, I'm happy that he wrote the books because it's given me a lot of joy. So,
Yeah.
you know, I'm
We were
hoping,
introduced to rooibos tea, which is the African red bush tea that Ma Ramotswe drinks a lot of.
yes, I know, and it's a delicious tea.
It's
If people not
delicious.
should, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would encourage everybody to read the next book
Yes.
because I think they'll enjoy
Mm.
reading it. Yeah.
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 I think so too. And yeah, it's just a really nice read. The books are easy to read. They're quick. They're very hopeful.
Mhm.
Things always work out in the end.
Yeah.
So if you are looking for a break from all that's happening in the world, but you still want to read a mystery, check out this series.
And remotes, and you can kind of, because these are very everyday life kind of
Mhm.
things that happen, you can kind of go through the process she goes through
Yeah,
of, solving, thinking about the problems that she's facing and stuff like that. So you can just, and it's kind of nice that, she comes up with a solution.
yeah, yeah, it is.
Right? Yeah.
All right. Well, closing thoughts. Do you have any closing to wrap up, Aji? To wrap up
Closing.
the episode?
No, I this is the first time I'm enjoying podcasting and with my beloved granddaughter Oorji. That's all I want to say.
Aw.
I am so happy that you joined us for this. I think that your insight into the book is very interesting. I don't think a lot of people have the opportunity to talk to somebody of
Mm.
your generation about things that they also enjoy. So this was really fun. I mean,
Yeah,
we do this all the time, but now we're bringing it to you, the larger audience.
that's right. That's right. So
Good.
this was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks everyone for
Yeah.
listening. I hope that you enjoyed reading this book. I very much did. And we are going to be back next week with Blood Over Bright Haven chapters something to something. I think we're on 10 to 12. So
Mhm.
this has been a very nice like 2 week break to do a little bit of like lighthearted fun stuff because we are reading a very serious book. So
Yes.
so get your brace yourselves chapters 10 through 12 of Blood Over Brighthaven next week, and we will have the lovely Colleen back from Europe as well. So that'll be really fun. In the meantime, if you haven't checked out our Twilight episode with Allie, definitely go check that out. I love that book series and the movies, and so does Allie. So we had a lot of fun talking about that as well. And I guess that's it. Signing off, folks. See
Okay.
ya.
Bye.
Bye.